So I said, Mary, we're going to keep this episode totally real and authentic. Mary's like, wait, this is not my first language. English is, wait a second, neither is it mine. I was 11 when we came to the United States. I'm from Belarus, Russian Jewish. Mary, what's your first language?
My first language, Adam, is actually French. I'm originally from Canada, the French part of Canada, Quebec City, to be exactly specific. But yeah, English not my first language either.
I would have never guessed. Well, we have a treat for our community because this is one of the first episodes that's going to be published inside Circle, our community. And Mary has graciously agreed to answer any questions from our community. So as you're listening to this, keep in mind, you're probably watching the YouTube right embedded inside, and there's a comment box below. So just type in your questions. And we're going to take on a big question today. We're going to talk about the future state of internal communications. And why do I say it's a big question? Is over the last 9 months, talk about the future people initiatives and employee experience. And obviously in employee experience, there's a ton of stuff. Recruiting, onboarding, performance. There's all these things. But it starts with internal communication. You fail at that, game over. Doesn't matter what else you're going to nail. So one more personal note though. So Mary, you had an addition to your family. I had to just go there first because when we did a call to discuss the podcast, was it 2 weeks after you had an addition?
Yeah, we welcomed to our family a beautiful young daughter. So excited about it. She's a blessing. She's great.
2 months now?
Almost. Yes, almost.
I
Nearly
couldn't.
two.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, Mary, what are you doing discussing a podcast with me? But you had the energy, you were passionate. I mean, it's awesome. Well, listen, let's give context to our audiences. I'd love for them to hear about your role. You're an international president for Thrive. I'd like for them to get a little context. This is what it means and a little bit about the organizational mission, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. No. Listen. I joined the team at Thrive about a year ago. And you know, I've just been amazed by the company, by its mission, and in general, like what's their purpose in life. So my role specifically is to oversee basically all of our international expansion. And what that means, we can dive into that. But basically, this company has very ambitious goal, and one of them is to absolutely be you know, helping small businesses outside of the United States to benefit from our software platform. So if I take a step back and just you know, dive into what Thrive is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Please do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the company Thrive has been around for a little over 125 years. So it's not very common that you walk into an organization that is that mature. But you know, this company has been around for that long with one specific goal in mind, and it is the goal of helping small businesses compete and win in the marketplace. At the high level, we provide you know, technology, we provide software, and we provide local business automation tools for basically small businesses owners to be able to manage their time, manage their communicate with their client, get paid, and really take control of their entire business and be more successful. You know, I talk about our mission, about our purpose. We firmly believe that customers out there deserve choices beyond the global chains, the global e-commerce, the Paneras, the Starbucks, the, you know, Amazon of the world. They're amazing, don't get me wrong, but we believe that consumer deserve choices. And we also believe in free enterprise and I guess a diverse, dynamic economy and really the dream of owning a successful business that applies to the small business owner. And we are a team, and I'm super proud of being part of that team. We're a team fiercely devoted to enabling local, independent businesses. So this is at the high level of Thrive. Is my role within the organization is to take that mission, which is a little bit, you know, I guess the newer American dream, the foundation of our belief as a society to empower entrepreneurships and empower local small business owner to thrive. And we're, you know, I want to take that platform, take that entire software platform that we build and help small businesses out there be successful.
Yeah, they're the backbone. They're a backbone of the economy, and that they're part of the dream is to launch a business and be successful. And in our discussion about your industry, you mentioned the yellow pages. I was like, whoa, that's a bit of a blast from the past. I haven't seen the yellow pages for a while. But what's the context of the yellow pages, and how does that translate into what you're doing today?
Sure. I mean, many years ago, the way that we would service people's needs would be through, accessing information about or accessing information about your company would be through directories. Those directories were, sent to each houses, and that's, I remember when I was young scrolling through the yellow pages to find a hairdresser or find a pet groomer or a plumber. I also remember being young and using those yellow pages, which were substantial, sitting on it at the Christmas party to be higher at the dinner table. But obviously, as you said, the industry has evolved a lot. What we've seen over the last few years is really a shift towards online. So a lot of those smaller companies out there are now using the online yellow pages. So if you go to yellowpages.com, for example, this is a way for you to feature your business. What we're seeing now in the marketplace is a consolidation there's so many ways you can market your company. There's so many places where you can display your ads, display your services. There's Yelp, there's your Google page, there's your Facebook page, your Google listing, your Facebook page, Instagram page. So we're seeing a lot of those local business owners being a little bit overwhelmed, and what I've seen software or yellow pages directory companies is trying to address that need. So some of them internationally have gone down a route of being an online kind of consolidator of all of those online display and helping them doing that. I've seen Yellow Pages companies also helping with referencing and helping them understand how to be well positioned on a search page like Google. At Thrive, we've really embraced the whole SaaS platform software, which makes us very unique in a sense that we've built our own proprietary SaaS platform, and I haven't seen anyone out there as successful as us in doing that transition.
Awesome. And let's give one last piece of context for the audience, which is when you look at the acquisitions to continue to further your mission, your purpose, and growth of the organization, what criteria do you look at to make sure they're aligned?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about growth and growth strategies, there's a few ways we can go at it. You mentioned an acquisition. This is absolutely one. We've made a few of them, obviously, in the history of Thrive. There's a certain set of criteria that dictates our idea of priorities. Which one do we want to prioritize? When you think about the complementary of the ICP, if the customer that they're catering to are the customers that we want to go after, this is, a 1 + 1 = 3 type of situation. So the ICP, the ICP, ideal client profile. I should mention that. Some executive alignment. This requires a certain amount of we are aligned. This is for the greater good, and this is what we're trying to achieve. So a certain amount of executive alignment. There's also a notion of having a product alignment too. If it's a software acquisition or if it's a directory or another yellow page company out there, there needs to be a sort of a product complement. So at the ICP level and at the product level. And finally, I'd say the fourth criteria is really our ability to execute. When you think about an acquisition, is this going to be successful? We're a publicly traded company. Is it for the greater goods of our shareholders? And is this going to infuse and help us take our mission to the next level? And are we able to execute on it?
Yeah. Is it going to be successful? Which my first career was in investment banking. Actually, I have a master's in finance, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. It didn't work out. I wasn't right for it. It wasn't right for me. But in investment banking, there was quite a bit of conversations about the lack of success with acquisitions. The dreams and ambitions and the strategical value often fall short when people come together. It's not easy to make it work. And you and I connected really on this idea of internal communications, how important it is. So maybe let's start there. Like, what do you see? How important is it in post acquisition, increasing the chance of success? And we'll kind of drift from there.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic, and this is a topic that I believe is gaining more and more recognition, meaning our ability to being clear to our workplace, to our workforce, to our people within our organization on the why, on the how we're making changes is something that I think a lot of the companies out there are struggling to do or are trying to do better. I think there's also even more a greater appreciation of the differentiation between sales and marketing. And I think, having a conversation on who owns that internal communication, I've seen in some organization that more the sales department will own it, another organization, the marketing department will own that responsibility. But fundamentally, I believe this is, it's a company-wide, or if you want to be clear and on how to address and how to communicate to your people, it needs to be shared amongst all of the leaders of the company. Now, there's a few ways we can take the conversation. I think we're learning best practices. We're applying them at Thrive. I think we're also a lot more equipped with different tools out there that are allowing us to facilitate a clear means to communication to our internal workforce. But yeah, it affects our people, it affects our process, and we need to have the right set of technology to support it. And
Listen, I think much of our conversation is about the future state because Mary, from our previous discussions, I think it's an emerging market. More and more folks that I talk to say, hey, how do we adapt marketing mindset to the employee experience, or simply put, how do we market to employees? Why is because we want to create an emotional connection. We want to meet them where they are. And there's something that you said that I hear over and over again, which is our North Star. How do we send the right message to the right audience, right? Because we want to show them that they matter.
I think the talking about the future state and the direction that we're taking in the North Star, as you're rightfully saying, Adam, I think what I'm seeing is we need more and more an ability to not just package a message and serve it to our employees. We need a way to have a conversation with them, and our ability as a company, as executives, as overall kind of as a company, you have to have the ability to establish that conversation with your employees. Mm-hmm. It can no longer be, hey, this is the changes, that's the memo, that's the email, jump on that webinar. On that webinar, no one's asking any question. It has to, the future will basically show us that in order for the changes to be adopted successfully, you have to have an open conversation. It needs to be a two-way conversation. They need to bring back feedback. They need to be able to ask questions. They need to have, and that's how I believe the future of the communication will be.
Totally agreed. Two-way communication. It can't be one stream, and it has to again meet them where they are. So people, process, technology is what we're going to need to figure out collectively in order to nail this emerging market. And so let's do this kind of in broad strokes, each one of them, right? People, you said leadership would have to be involved in this. Totally. But let's think about who within the organization should own this. Like if you were to think about internal communications as a swim lane, Should this be a CHRO? Should this be a chief people officer? I've had some cases chief marketing officer, and maybe it depends on their organization. But how would you think about who is accountable within the organization for internal communications? And then what kind of team members would you think in the future state would be beneficial to have in that?
Yeah, I think you've said it the right way. I think it depends on each organization. I think every organization is structured slightly differently. However, there needs to be an executive leader. There needs to be someone that is held accountable for making that conversational communication happen. And whether it's in the office of the HR people and the office of the marketing leader, this depends. But having a specific executive leader that oversees that with an executive endorsement and some understanding of as you said, meeting where they are, a deep understanding of the challenges, really being able to think and understand the audience. Then you asked about the supporting team. Obviously, I think there needs to be a cross-functional group of people that is invested in that initiative if you want that initiative to be successful. Meaning, even if it sits in the office of the CMO, for example, it cannot uniquely be folks from the marketing team that sits under that team. I believe it should. You want to involve folks from different departments, really make it cross-functional, and the reality is that being able to communicate in a changing landscape in newer countries and in different languages and different time zone, you will need more than people. As you said, you talked about a process and also a set of technology that supports it. So to summarize what I'm trying to say is I believe you need to have someone that has the power to go and execute that conversational communication, but you absolutely need a cross-functional team to execute on it.
I love the concept of conversational communication as the anchor as we continue, because it just simply implies you're treating them, as humans. We don't want to be told. We don't want to feel like we work at a DMV, in the words of another guest, Jennifer, a couple months ago. So I want to go to process for a minute, and then I'm going to do it in broad strokes. Totally okay. If you're like, Adam, I don't see it the same way as you do. And in fact, I encourage those kinds of conversations. If we all have clean, clear conversations about an emerging market, we're not having a real discussion. So you said meeting them where they are. And to me, that's data. The only way to meet them where they are is to look at the data, and to look at the data. I'm often getting this question of what data. So if you are a marketer and someone says, hey, what data would you like about a customer? I think in short, the marketer would say all data. And then I'll figure out what's relevant. In our case, post-acquisition as an example, although internal communication is important for you, not just with the acquisitions, but with the organic growth in your existing team members, but specifically post-acquisition, would you want to see data where you have performance meets payroll, meets potentially collaboration data, where you can look at the entire world that they have in order to then communicate with them in a way that's relevant for them?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Data fuels the decision making, and it absolutely substantiates some of the decision that we're making. So performance data is one. I think you talked about collaboration data. I think there's and again, if you think about fast forward into 3 different countries or 3 different continents, 60 different countries. You need to understand. You need again to substantiate your decision with clear data. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation the notion of empathy, and I think that's also something that as part of the processes we're putting in place and the people we're identifying. There's certain and the data will tell us something, and it's the foundation of our decision making, but ultimately. You talked about managing people and communicating with them. There's a certain amount of empathy that needs to happen throughout the process.
Awesome. So then I want to jump to the other side. So on one side, we got data, employee data. The all the way on the other side, how do we create this two-way communication? And I go back to nudges, now biased alert. Like those who are listening most know, part of a technology company, we've been on a nudge journey now for 6 years, millions delivered. But forget our technology. People are so busy, the attention span, getting through the noise. I don't think we're in an age now where we're going to send a long email or we're going to keep delivering what we need to deliver to create this communication via 30-minute or 1-hour town hall sessions.
Yep.
So, Mary, what say you? What would be all the way on the opposite side of how they experience this two-way communication?
I agree. We can no longer just PowerPoint people to death, and it just doesn't work anymore. Not where and we've seen it, the Zoom fatigue, the webinar fatigue, and obviously this is a consequence of changing our workforce, the consequences of COVID and how that had an impact on how we're working today. But I am not interested in sitting on a webinar for 3 hours, even if this is my executive team sharing the company direction. It has to be a lot more consumable. And going back to the point we were making, it has to be a two-way communication, and there's multiple evidence of that outside of the workforce that we are also that's pointing us that direction. Obviously, a few months ago, the release of the Chat GPT 3 or 4, whatever version they're on now, that is a completely different way to consume information as a consumer. You go on Google, you query Google. This is an answer, you get back an answer. Whereas the interaction that you're having with this new AI engine is a lot more conversational. It's a chat bot, a la chatbot experience where you're powering a set of questions and you're building context. So how do we apply that to the workplace, and how do we apply that to the employees that we're serving is by making that conversation not a one way, and making that conversational. I think that's number one. Other, I guess, sub bullets, you also have to be extremely transparent. I often say bad news don't get better with time. You have to be upfront from the beginning. But you really want to bring those folks into the transition, and provide a lot of insights as the company evolves. It's not so much down the road. Here's the outcome. You want to make sure that you're transparent, and that you're bringing them into the journey. However, that just making sure that they're aware. They'll value that. They'll feel empowered, and they'll feel like they're part of the change. Yeah.
So in the journey, right? We're talking about the employer journey, and we're thinking about it not, PowerPoint them to death. So make it bite-sized, make it simple. I love that term. And which aspect of the employee experience? And you and I talked about internal comms, but this also applies to any HR, any leadership development, onboarding, recruiting. Would you agree that the employee experience is any touch point they have with their organization? And we must, over time, this isn't tomorrow, this isn't going to happen overnight, but similar to customer experience used to suck.
Yeah.
Like compared to what it is today. Like United Airlines, you click a few buttons, you check in, you do everything online. It was easy 20 years ago, right? You call a travel agent, there's a paperwork, you got to go pick it up. There was a whole process. Now all the touch points have evolved. Would you agree that that's how we need to approach the employee experience?
Absolutely. There's a concept that used to be very popular, I want to say, a decade ago. It was all about customer centricity. And again, remember that this was a very highly, powerful. You could research it. It was all about, how do we want to operate under, making sure the customer is being served. And this is right. This is how a lot of companies have been very successful, making it, centering it around the customer. And having the whole experience and how you're serving the customer really centered around them. All different, whether it's invoicing, whether it's, serving the customer with customer support, whether it's, selling in the sales process, it had to be around the customer centricity. I firmly believe that today it is a lot more around the employee centricity. How do we empower our employees to do more on their own? How do we motivate them? How do we infuse a sense of meaning in their workplace and in their daily tasks? How do they find meaning in there? So that notion of having our operations kind of centered around the employee, obviously to a certain extent, job needs to be done, and if you're not delivering, there are processes in place to part ways with that individual. But when you've got strong influencers, strong team leader, you want to identify them, you want to be transparent with them, and then you want to be clear with them.
Can you imagine back in the day when saying customer centricity was an entirely new concept? People are like, what are you talking about?
That's true.
And then there was the customer obsession. And now I think we'll look back at this year, last couple of years, where we said, now turn that internally, and long term you're going to win. Where I'd love to take the conversation next is, we talked about data, we talked about nudges. I did all I could not to discuss AI, but you went there. You were like, Adam, ChatGPT, here's what's going on. So Mary, let's dream as every person listening, everyone in our community, who isn't thinking about how it's going to create an impact. So are we saying data on one side, nudge on the other side, and AI in between responsibly with governance, subject to lots of disclaimers of how it's going to be used? But we're having a conceptual conversation. Is this data, AI, nudge future we're describing?
Yeah, I mean, data fuels the AI model. AI models are trained on data. So if you're sitting on a subset of data that you can use to train, your model, this is great. I think data is essential, and I think we're getting the AI is getting smarter about helping make sense out of that data, and helping us come to conclusion, helping decision maker make decisions faster. I personally use I feel AI on a daily basis to automate, proofread, help analysis. It's super helpful as a leader, but that doesn't change. We still need the employee that are at the center of it to deliver on our services. I guess at least for now, but you're right. I think it's highly going to change how, as leaders and as organization, not only as how we're serving the customers, but how we're also communicating and serving our internal employees. The data, the nudge, the AI, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to shape out, but we are seeing now that we have the ability to interact with an AI, and this drives and provides a lot of value. Imagine when that AI will be using data that is internal to and today it's using the web data or public data. Imagine if we train that AI and using enterprise data, using internal data that obviously there's security parameters, there's a whole set of other issues. But if we train that AI using internal data, and we could have a conversation with that to find our answers, I think our employees are going to be empowered a lot.
It's somewhere between thrilling, exhilarating, and horrifying. Just like what is going to change. But to our discussion now, a two-way communication, you can seriously accomplish that. You can actually have an employee engage in a way that we never dreamed possible.
You're right, Adam. And I think going back to what you were talking, you said, we talked about people, process, and the third pillar was technology. And, I'm not sitting here today saying, oh, this is the perfect software and this is the perfect technology to go accomplish that conversational communication. But I certainly believe AI, in essence, whatever shape or form, will enable these sort of interaction. and that is going to be the foundation of the technology platform we'll want to use as leader in order to drive that conversational communication internally.
With you. So instead of talking about the future state, I'm going to pull us back, and as we're kind of coming to an end, we'll focus on giving advice to our audience, but in the following context. And I'm on the calls now almost every day. Today, 8 conversations between pre-interviews where I get to know folks and on air. And I talk to a lot of folks in the internal communication space. And this is I wouldn't say low technology. They're all savvy, but it's not like there's a lot of really advanced technologies that have been developed for internal communication purposes. Like obviously there's email, there's collaboration tools. And what we're discussing now is a gigantic leap forward for what the intended purpose here for the employee experience for internal comms, from data all the way to a nudge. This is going to be a giant leap. And Mary, like you and I haven't discussed this, just brainstorming, what do we think the skill sets are necessary for those who are going to begin to build the bridge into that next phase? I think it's somewhere between marketing and employee experience, or call it HR. It's neither. It's a combined. It's a hybrid. It's an ongoing debate in our community, but also I think in anyone that's embarking on this journey. How would you think about what are the right skill sets necessary to begin to build the bridge toward this future state that we're describing?
This is such an important question, and obviously, if I'd have a crystal ball, I'd love to, just say this is. I can offer things that I'm seeing that are going to be valuable. I unfortunately cannot predict future, and I wish I'd have that crystal ball. But I think this is such an important question, because as we're seeing our assumption being highly disrupted by the recent advancements of technology, mainly through AI. You are wondering what are going to be the criteria to be successful to ensure that transition towards that future state of, again, conversational communication. And I think there's a couple of things that are important. The number one thing that I'd like to touch on is just the emotional intelligence. And it's a term that's been used extensively, but the way that I would offer to use it in this context is someone that you want to have strong leaders, influencers that can help take the company into that new direction. And those leaders, those influencers, they need to be inspirational. They need to bring people. They need to get everybody excited about the change, not going and helping the ones that are resistant to changes to adopt it. So I think great leadership matters at every level and every function, and this is something that is going to be absolutely a criteria for success. You want to identify influencers on each team, and whether when you acquire a company, when you enter a new market, you want to identify the influencers on each team and have them really be your agent of change. And that skills of emotional intelligence is highly important, and you cannot train any AI model to do that for you. There are some people that are experts at that. I think these internal leaders act as basically your internal voice. And they're the one that are enabling that conversation. So you come in, you explain what you want to do, you have a conversation. Some of us will walk out and go do something else. Whoever stays in place are your internal key leaders, and they need to be highly intelligent emotionally. The way that I've been successful at that is I've always kept them very close to you identify them, and then once you provide them information in events, you make sure that they're very well treated, but that's that's one. The second thing I'd like to touch on is the notion of really being transparent. Is essential in order to to facilitate these sort of future state. Meaning, what I've experienced is by being transparent on your aspiration and being clear on the objective the mission and the why we're doing that, the purpose, is really helping set everybody up for success. When you're keeping your cards in your hands and you're not sharing them, that's when the confidence you're not building the confidence and the rapport, whether it's with your leaders or with the entire team. The notion of transparency is a skill that I believe, or communication that is transparent. So I guess those are the two points. I'm happy to go in a different direction, but those are the two that comes in mind.
I think that's amazing. Focus on the influencers. These are your early adapters that will support the change and be transparent, which is, breeds honesty. This is because we know what happens when you're not and everyone is guessing and they're worried about the future. They're not going to a good place. The default is not it's going to be awesome. The default is, what's my worst case scenario? What am I going to do with my family? And off we go. And then you act like that throughout the day. It's a downward spiral. But you said happy to go another direction. And this is, I think, a good one to say for those who are listening. I mean, Mary's awesome. So she's open to questions below as you are listening to the episode. As you think about, we have an expert here that is exposed to international, to organic growth, acquisitions, who is in that hot seat to make sure these things are successful. This is not a point of view based on hypotheticals. This is an area of responsibility. So jump in with your questions. Mary's going to answer them. And again, Mary, huge thank you for your time. I know how busy you are, and with the little one especially. So on behalf of our entire community, the innovator community, just thank you for jumping in and sharing your point of view.
It was such a pleasure, Adam. Thank you for allowing me to be part of that, and I'd welcome a conversation with all of you in the platform. I'm more than welcome to or happy to engage there. So thank you for your time, Adam.
Wonderful, wonderful. Until next time, Mary. Over and out.
Thank you.